Eek, eek. Good morning, everybody. Today is Friday, May 19th, and it's time for Protecting the Nest. Good morning, Amber.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great today. Finally got a good night's sleep.
Oh, good. My sleep is on again, off again. It really depends on what the news is, and since I'm mommy by day, I can't research or do anything until the evening, and then you have to have downtime so you don't have nightmares after you research. So then I'll either watch something funny, read something funny, or go on a Twitter space where they have troll time, where there's a bunch of people who do really funny stuff and they troll. And so, you laugh and then you turn everything off and go to sleep. Because if you go to sleep after reading or seeing the brutal honesty of what's going on, it's kind of nightmarish. So,
Yeah, one thing that I learned from Tyrone, well, he learned it from Lena Poo, is to always turn off the Wi-Fi before you go to bed.
yeah, well, at least an hour.
Mhm.
So I prefer to listen to Audible or to listen to someone on Twitter Spaces that's being funny or telling jokes, or where it's not serious, it's lighthearted, but it's about cooking or something like that, and put it away from the bed. And that way I fall asleep to it. But like there's people who look on their phone and they think they're just going to set it down and fall asleep. It's just not going to happen.
No.
No, you're still firing at all levels, and you're not going to be able to calm your brain down. So you got to get it far away from you.
Right. And we know from talking to Judith Berry Baker, that these EMs interfere with your ability to meditate and to pray, and the less that we have them on, the better.
Yeah, I think for me, the problem is you have to actually not tap all the way out, because then you don't know what to pray for. Right? So it's kind of like you have to join in the jungle to see what's in the jungle, to see what needs to change in the jungle, so that you can pray about and meditate on the things that need to be different from what we see in the jungle. So you can't escape it and then think that you're going to be able to address the issue. Like I have friends who they're totally tapped out of everything, and the things that they are talking about aren't things that are really the bigger issue at the moment. Like they're usually stuck on something that is an issue, but it by far is not the main issue, and it's not the precursor to the next problem. In a priority, it's kind of mid to further down the list. And so when people are looking at, well, 10 years ago or 14 years ago, great. Can we worry about yesterday and tomorrow? Because that's what is affecting us. And yeah, if you're kind of researching to kind of figure out how we got where we are, great. But if you're just concentrating on what happened 10 or 14 years ago, and that's still your today, you're missing most everything, and your priorities are way out of whack. So that's what's really hard, is knowing you have to keep up with the news in order to meditate or pray on it. And in order to take action for your family and secure your family, you actually have to know what you're securing them from. You have to know what is going to be fed to them. And so you have to look at the poison to see what to do in order to protect your family and protect your nest. So that's the difficulty, is we're forced to face stuff that we'd like to tune out because it's better for our psyche. It's better for our sleep. It's better for our constitution. It's better for everything, except then we're like a blind person walking onto a railroad track. It's just not smart. So we're stuck in this crazy pattern.
Good morning, Tara.
Hello. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you
All
fine.
right. Yes.
It looks pretty behind you.
Yeah, I want to share some lilacs here.
Oh, so beautiful. I bet they smell amazing.
They do. And I always try to keep some from last year and do something magical with the ones from last year. So
nice.
Lilacs are a thing. And there's this poem that I want to share with you guys when I find it. My mom has it, but I looked the other day when I was on the show with you guys when they were blooming, and it's like a nostalgic poem. And I can remember, you sit on the swing, I'll sit on the porch, and it's about like ritual of the season, how we always do this, you know.
Oh, nice. That's really nice.
Yeah, but I just jumped on here on I heard the end of what you were saying, and I'm not sure what the beginning was, but it just made me think of like the way that I kind of stalk myself as far as like finding that balance of like needing to know what's going on, but also needing to really make sure that you don't get grinded down. And to what exactly that means about getting grinded down is specific to each person's individual way of understanding things and dealing with things. So each person knows themselves the best, and you can
Yeah.
think, okay, if I spend a bunch of energy, you know, doing XYZ, looking into this, like how is that time going to be spent? Am I going to be giving myself like an anxiety attack? You know, maybe I should, you know, take the energy and go because there's always so many different directions that we can go in, you know, and you don't really want to go in the direction that's going to cause you a lot of acidity and stress, you know. So it's almost like the warrior way of being reminded, okay, when the stress comes, that's when you take the deepest breaths, that's when you get the most grounded, you just kind of you let the heavens tell you. One spiritual message that I got was, you know, I was kind of feeling a little panicked, and just like this voice came in, like, go to your deepest place of knowing. And then I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I think that's what has been difficult, I think, for most people, is that they're stuck in this, I don't want to know. I don't want to look into it because I don't want to get depressed. I don't want this to happen. I don't want this to happen. And then they're caught off guard. And then they get caught in this like tangled mess. And because they just trusted that everything would be fine, because they haven't really kept up with like how desperate the measures are for people battling for world domination, and that they're used as fodder and as a pawn in these situations. And then they find themselves like literally the victim of circumstance because they didn't understand the circumstance that was around the corner. And I think that for me, I would rather be tired and just deal with how sad that is and then meditate on it, pray about it, than just be totally ignorant of it. Because I'd never forgive myself for not knowing about it and putting my children in danger, because it was uncomfortable for me to have to face reality. Like, I either am grown enough to have kids and to adult and to be a good parent, or I'm a chicken shit, excuse my language. And I don't mean that in a negative way. Some people just don't understand that copping out puts them in a more vulnerable state that can cause much more damage than the sadness they'll feel when they actually see what's going on in the world. Right. So it's you know, it's no matter which way you fall, it's not going to be comfortable. It's uncomfortable, but you gain wisdom, you gain knowledge, you gain friendship, you gain a circle of trust, you gain teachable lessons, you gain an evolving, and you pass tests that are right there in front of us every day. So there's more benefit. It's just hard to process because, especially if you're sensitive as a person, you're like, why? And that's so bad. And you just want to, you know, scream out. But, you know, I think sensitive people, we can do so much good, but if we don't know what to do and we don't know what's going on, we can't do anything. So I think that's where it gets difficult, because most of the people who have a lot of empathy, they steer clear of negativity. So they don't, that healing power that they have, they're not really able to utilize it because they don't know what's going on that's causing that person to be sad. They're just guesstimating. And it's hard to actually be there for them if you have no idea what's going on and what they may be going through. So it's kind of, it's a tough situation, but I don't think particular people were created a specific way if they couldn't handle it. It's just, it might not feel good all the time.
And I think that there's a lot of people that don't trust themselves, and that's not necessarily something that you know, I mean, there's a lot out there that push people to not trust themselves, you know, don't trust, you know, something that's somebody grew because it hasn't been tested and all this stuff. So it's like some people are, like, you know, you're walking along the trail, you see a natural berry, you eat them. Some people to that, they'd be like, what? But, you know, it's just, people are so different, you know, and I think that the problem that we run into is that when people don't find their niche of where they really do feel solid, then we're supposed to trust the experts in every department, right? Every department, just trust the experts, trust the experts. Well, you know, life and the way that people learn, you know, that's why the grandmas know so much, or even just a little kid that just has a knack for some particular kind of skill. It's just like the ability to do things ourselves and go to that deep place of knowing, and not necessarily have to say, and believe me, the experts we need the experts. I'm not saying that we don't need the experts, because you get information just like anybody. You get if you're unsure of something, you get a round of advice, and then you go and you meditate on it, or you don't even need to do that. You just pray on it and you get a direct message, you know? So it's not like cookie cutter, you know, and one thing that I would say too is, like, one time, years ago, when I was going through something, a friend told me, you know, keep busy, you know, keep busy. And some people I've seen keep busy to the point where they're ignoring important things. Myself, I might get like stuck because I'm thinking too much, you know, and I need to just be active. So one of the things to do is, like, get your tools in order, and kind of arrange that stuff, and feel along the way as needed, but don't just get caught up in just feeling. And I'm talking to myself as much as everyone else.
Yeah. So how I do things, I tend to be weird because I'm one of those, I'll dive in to something uncomfortable. It's kind of like why, here's the first example. I bumped my elbow. It hurts really, really bad. I can either walk around and go, ow, 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 or I can put so much pressure on it to make it hurt worse, so that when I release it, it doesn't hurt as much. And then I'm done with it. Right. So I'm kind of one of those, like, if I hurt my knee, I'm going to hit it. I'm going to, like, be really rough with it, you know, and then put a Band-Aid. I'm pour alcohol in it. I'm going to make it worse than it was. And then there's no pain, because at least it doesn't feel like that. Right. So it's kind of a self-induced pain purposely, so I can get over the initial issue. So especially, and here's another example. Right before the pandemic, I noticed a division happening with friends, with certain neighborhoods, with particular behaviors. So instead of unfriending and instead of distancing myself, I just stayed friends, knew when to stay quiet, knew when not to stay quiet, and then watched as it divided. And then that's how I knew there was an algorithm, because nobody was talking about the same thing. And if you brought up something you're hearing from this group had never heard it. And if you shared it with them, they were skeptical because they had already gotten information that was contrary. And so I did that for almost 8 months and realized there is a severe algorithm happening. And then I was like, holy cow, no wonder everyone is so dogmatic and so sure that whatever expert advice, whatever PubMed, whatever document, whatever data you have, there was contradictory data, a contradictory article, a contradictory interview. And they were fed that while I was fed something else. But I noticed when I grabbed them all together and said, well, this group was saying this group was saying this group was saying this. They're all written by the same entity, but they're written in a way that it is different than the other. So they're going to everyone's wants and desires, and it'd be the same, you know, news place. It would be the same individuals reporting, like it would be CNN, but there would be 4 different writers or 3 different writers that had different spins, and they would be fed to different people. And you're not supposed to see the other spin, because we as people are supposed to be repulsed by someone who doesn't agree with us and then go And during this time, if you remember, they were like, go be with your people, find your tribe, find your people. And so you're hearing this in songs, you're seeing this on the new movies, your kids are hearing this at school, like everybody, it's normal to have cliques, it's normal to have this. And I was like, no, I'm fighting against that. This wave is telling me if I don't like what someone's saying, run away. And I was like, no, I'm going to like stay firm. And that's when I figured it out. And I was like, oh, wow, this is so deceptive. And then I felt so bad for everybody who was divided. I felt really bad because I knew they didn't know. And how can you get mad at a friend who has no idea that the information they're receiving is one of like 4 different articles that say
That's one of the
something
best
different
things. That is one of the best things that we can do on protecting the nest, is to show people some of the ways that the divide and conquer strategies are so fine-tuned and so targeted to small groups, to your particular group.
It really is. And I'm just going to do a plug right now that I didn't send a link to because I feel like it's like 45 minutes and I feel like the whole thing is worth watching. But I don't know if it was 7 days ago or what, but Jimmy Dore did a video with a psychologist. I don't have his name right now. I have a screenshot of it, but he was just talking about analyzing the way that the mass psychosis was able to come in, the platform, I think he's Russian, the platform of like how what we all watch happen. And even like what Amber is always warning about is like not letting a smaller mass formation take over the people that reject the large mass formation, so it's anytime there's a group think, even if it's the best group think ever, it's always going to be a danger zone because like just like any kind of scene, you need somebody like on the roof, in the back, on the side, which is never going to be the same angle even when you see the same scene. So we need to constantly keep that in mind. And that's why kindness but suspicion is the way to go. And you don't have to stay, once you figure something out, but start off suspicious. And that's, I think, what we need to teach the kids.
Yeah, that's healthy. It's just healthy skepticism, right? Because you don't want to fall prey to just being manipulated. And there's nothing wrong as long as soon as somebody says something, you're not a contrarian or devil's advocate or just argumentative, right? You keep that inside, you put it in a file, right? Someone says something and you go, oh, I didn't know, I'll have to look into that. You put it in a file and then you change the subject to something fun, but you go home and you actually look into it. Right? Instead of judge it immediately, just be skeptical. Don't be naive and don't be easily manipulated. Right? But, with us humans, we tend to be like a pendulum. We're either going to believe everything we're told or nothing at all, when actually it's kind of right here. When you don't want the pendulum swing, that's when someone gets really hurt. You want it just to stay stationary. Then there's nothing to swing to cut somebody's head off. Right? So you just don't want the pendulum moving. And so it's best when you're processing things, you understand maybe they know, maybe they don't know, maybe they've been manipulated, maybe they're manipulating, maybe it's coming from a good place, maybe it's not. I don't know. I don't have time and I don't want to be an ass. And so you just move on. And then if it means that much to you and you think they're going to want to talk about it again, then you look into it. If not, you forget the conversation even happened. You just file it away. Not a big deal. But we put so much pressure on ourselves to want to know right then, to have an answer right then, to argue it right then, or to bring up something that might be relative or might be connected, but there's no proof. It's just we don't trust so-and-so who might know so-and-so, who might be connected to so-and-so. So now we want to pontificate and tell everybody, oh, I bet it's this, and this is why I would never trust the person. No, unless you have tangible evidence, shut your mouth. Because that's the problem. There's a lot of like pontification that later a lot of people research, and it was just hooey. We're just people guessing and throwing out guesstimations. When you don't guess, you have to find the solid connection, or at least a relative, connection, and then find the thread, then pull on it. It's not you just look at a bunch of threads on a bunch of different pieces of material and you start pulling a bunch of random threads. It gets you nowhere. You have to stay on that one thread, pull that one thread. To keep, you can't just go to a different piece of material for a different thread. That's like it's not going to tell you anything. Now you've got a different thread. So I think, there's things that researchers have learned that sometimes because they want to be part of the conversation or they want to be a problem solver, they just jump onto, I bet it's probably, oh, wouldn't it be crazy? Instead of, well, we know this person did this and they were connected to this person and follow the money and da, 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 da. Now you've got something tangible and you can look into it more. But it's just, unless people know those techniques, we are going through a crazy time and people do, in a panic, really want to be like, I bet it's this, because we've been harmed. We've been traumatized. So you're going to see the worst in individuals, entities, groups, and establishments because you don't want to get screwed over again. So it's like saying, hey, you know how you're scared about what they're going to do next? You should just shut up and not have an opinion. That's just not going to work when everybody's been screwed with, right? So you got to expect some people are going to jump the gun, but just don't get irritated with them and don't snap back, or don't just try to disprove them to shut them up. Just be like, okay, well, they're going through it just like everybody else. Well, maybe there's something to it. I don't know. I haven't found any proof. If they've got proof, they can keep researching it. I'm on this thread, right? So I think we put too much stock into wanting someone to see it our way when they have to get there on their own.
I feel like that about Alex Jones throughout the years. Like, people would have so much things to say about him, and I'm like, nope, not good enough. Nope, doesn't convince me nothing. Nope, I still like him. Sorry. So, and people can have their opinion too, but you don't need to. Suspension of judgment is key to detective work.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And if you look back at Sherlock Holmes, one of my favorites, he was notorious for looking at a crime scene and coming up with a hypothesis, but he wouldn't call it a hypothesis. And then he would wait till, Watson would say something and he would say, whoa. And then he would look at it from a different perspective. And then he'd be very quiet. And then he'd go do something random, like disappear in an alley or say I'm going to sleep and take a 5-minute nap and then come back being really, avant-garde and then come to a conclusion, but not at any time did he start screaming. Now, the newer Sherlock Holmes, yeah, because they had to make it hyped up. But like the real classics, he didn't come back screaming and over the top, condemning everybody and losing his temper. He just came back with a resolve and with a completion of one thought moving on to another, and then would put out a hint to see if the culprit that he was looking into was going to react. And he wouldn't say anything particular that had to do with guilt. He would say something that would have to do with an item of clothing that someone had worn, or the way someone wore a hairpin in their hair. Something specific that only the killer would have an opinion about because of how the body was found, right? And so he would go around about to mention something to see if the person would have a micro expression or a reaction or would totally ignore, versus if it's somebody who always has an answer. And then when he mentions something, they clam up. That's when he would, okay. And then they would be on the list of like people to keep watching. And he would slowly do that. And it would look like he wasn't making any sense, but he was. Right. And so, we have to look at it like not everybody's going to make sense with how they're researching or what they know. You just have to not take it like as if they're God, solving the world's problems, but that they're on their journey and that your research may correlate with one another. It may not. You may think you're on the same page that has to do relatively with what you're all thinking about, but it may not actually be that at all. So you just have to give people their moment and then they'll learn to give you yours. But if you're a contrarian who, no matter what they say, you've got something better to add to it, they're going to start to try to prove you wrong. Then you've just got researchers proving each other wrong and nobody's proving what the hell's going on. Right. And so that's really, that is one of my pet peeves. Like, oh yeah, researchers to concentrate on just trying to cancel each other out rather than just get to the bottom of what's going on. That makes sense.
But it's very hard to get to the bottom when you have people like Steve Bannon who are actively throwing new shiny objects, or red meat, as George would call it. They throw red meat in just the right places at just the right groups to continue. You might be 90% of the way towards an agreement on some issue. And then there's this other red meat that's a tangential issue, and you all go after that red meat. And what you had in converging on a solution for the first topic, for example, Bill Barr, it dissipates and you lose the energy. That's where Mark Kulak is so good at staying on. He's focused on the topic and he keeps on week after week. Bill Barr, Bill Barr, Bill Barr.
Well, what I always look at is I enjoy everyone's like digging in their research. But once all the research comes there, I'm like, okay, but why? Like, why? And then I have to go back cause, effect, cause, effect. So Bill Barr did this, but why? Who did something that caused him to do this? And then after he did this, who did that? Because it takes two to tango. So yes, there's a Bill Barr, but there's also someone who's just as bad, who was instigating on the other side of the power struggle that was doing the same stuff. So to me, two people struggling for power, two entities, are both causing great harm because they're helping a few on each side want to gain power, and everyone else is fodder and a pawn. So if I'm going to look at one particular person, but I'm not going to look at the stimulation on the other side, that it's part of the cause and effect, then I won't understand the full, like, why did Bill Barr say this? It doesn't matter if what he did was awful, right? It is, right? But what is he counteracting? What did the other person do? Was the other person walking through a field of daisies and smelling wonderful things and saving every animal on earth and building up every woman and child and helping, solve the world from all hunger crisis and bring water to the deserts? Or were they just as kind of messy? Right. And so that's really particular for me, because if it's two jackasses battling it out, I want to know what they're battling for. I want to know who they're going to use and hurt. I want to know who's going to be labeled as the bad guy, or what country's going to fall, and how many innocent people are going to die. Right. And the two battling it are on my last nerve. Right. Because unless they can just battle in a battle royale on an island where it's just the ones dominating and trying to get power, then they're really hurting a ton of other people and innocent people. And one of the things God hates is when there's death of innocent people. And so why would I take the side of anybody who's willing to kill innocent people in a world domination plot, right? No one is the better one in that situation. A lying tongue, those who spread chaos among brethren, those who give false witness, and those who shed innocent blood. Like, so for me, yeah, Bill Barr's got a lot of explaining to do, but who is doing that battle on the opposite side that he's battling? Because if he wasn't battling anybody, he would get his way 100% of the time, and everybody would be in Bill Barr land. And we're not. We're in a struggle. We're in a tug of war. So who's on the other side of that rope? Who's over here? Who's over here? I don't like either one. I don't like how they're doing it. Why? Because innocent people are being hurt. And until they can master a way where they fight for dominance, but no one innocent gets hurt, and you don't have to spread lies, and you don't have to sow chaos among brethren, I'm not going to break those laws of God and then choose a side from two devils. I'm sorry, they're two devils. Like, I don't particularly like their style of battle. Our tongue is our sword, right? So when I'm seeing two entities battle it out and they're trying to convince me the other one's the devil, I'm wondering why they're playing games with the devil instead of just beating the devil. And
also, it makes me think, who's setting the two up? Like, who is the, who's playing the two? Because it's where we're at in these times. It's always so hard for me to believe that people, even very powerful people, work alone and have like this personal thing they're doing. I mean, of course, they do have a personal thing. It's just the stage doesn't seem set for any just like personal thing. It seems so much more complicated than that.
Absolutely. That's what's difficult, is knowing that there are entities that are hidden hands and unknown that actually have these groups that everyone researches to figure out what they're up to, battling, and they're working for an entity that nobody ever gets to, because we're just looking for the winner and the loser, when it's actually just the citizens and the people of the world who suffer and die. And for me, it's going to be hard to protect my children if I say I choose this side of the tug of war, and then later my kids are caught up in a battle on that side of the tug of war, I choose to have them killed because they're just a pawn. And so as a mother, it's my responsibility, and someone who prays and someone who wants to do good, right? I have to consider that I don't like either side of the tug of war. I don't like the way the game is played. I don't like the way the war is being fought. However, I'm at a disadvantage because I'm a female. And males are the most dominant, and feminine has their place. And so my place is to protect my children. And in that, I don't look at one side of the tug of war being of great godliness and the other side being of great evil. I look at them as being fallible men doing fallible things in a fallible world. And I don't want my kids caught up in it. All right. And I think that's a very smart and wise thing to do. And until God lets me know that it is now time to choose a side, this is where I stay. Analyzing, researching, trying to understand cause and effect, action, reaction, because that's the only way I can protect my children and not blindly go into because I like the way this person looks or what they said or how they said it, or that they're tall or that they're short or that they're rich or that they're poor or they're like Robin Hood or they're like Jesus. I actually just really need to make sure to protect my children because that's really the job that I have as a wife and a mother. And so that has to be the first and foremost, and then protect my neighbors, my friends, my family, and do my job as a citizen, right? So it's very sticky situation that we're all in because it's layered, and it's like there's 40 tug of war ropes all twisted into a big Gordian knot, and nobody can really tug it, and it's not going to come loose unless you cut it in half. But then, is the hero the one that cuts it in half, or is it the evil one that set it up to begin with that cuts it in half and everybody runs to and says, thank God we have a savior? So that's another thing you have to worry about. Once they built that rope, they built that Gordian knot, is the person who actually addresses the issue, good or bad. Now we're on to another part of the game board that they put us on. So it's so layered, but I think if we take it one day at a time, we're honest with ourselves and we feel our feelings without medicating it, trying to make it go away, trying to dismiss it, and we dive right in. Right? We understand, okay, I'm anxious because of this. I'm fearful because of this. I'm angry because of this. I'm depressed because of this. And then we find something that calms us, something that brings out the serotonin, something that brings out that chemical that our body naturally makes in order to heal ourselves. Then we know who we are. Then we can actually protect those we love. But if we numb out, we don't know what's going on. All we are is just susceptible to deceit because we're not sober in our mind and our thoughts. And so it's very difficult. I mean, it's not easy, but if you look at it a particular way, I think it's calming because we have to be big people. We have to be strong of spirit and take it one day at a time and just take the love that our children show us or the love that we receive even from someone walking through the grocery store who smiles at us. Take those things as a win, put it in your head and go to that memory. Store those memories, and this is my important happy folder, and open it up whenever you need to, because those are things that are memories. That's part of your life. That's part of your structure. That's very important to have and access. That is your medicine, and if we rightly put things where they belong, then we're able to access what we need when it's necessary.
I think that is so important. And it's like, how like when you're a kid, you had an experience that's just, it was only one afternoon or one day, but it was so important. Like those mean so much to us, to me and all of us. And so that's why my method with kids is always to create those days, create those times and create those days that are so fun and joyful and exciting that it feels like it was like a whole big adventure, and it was just one afternoon that if you're just sitting there doing work or something could go by. But like building these memories and even everything that we've gone through, as adults in the past few years, it's like I really feel like we are paving the way for good medicines for the people in all forms, and it's such a struggle because we absolutely will not let the poisons of yesterday flow into our futures. Okay. Because the present that we have, and that's what I'm reminded too, getting ahead of myself, spring fever, relax, breathe every breath, feel it, be in yourself, and just know that this is all being done for such a divine purpose. We're all called to do this, and we're all linked and we're all unified in whatever piece we have to offer. And so, I going through all this with everybody has been so incredible, I think, in my life and all of our lives. And yeah, it gets really stressful. And so I'm so happy to finally come and join with you guys and talk. And I know that Carol will be tapping in soon, but you're right, Amber, just keeping it solid for the kids, our own kids of our world. And we're going to do this for them, and things are going to come out better than they ever have before. And it's all going to be worth it.
And I think that's why it's so important to remind others, like how we see them. So when I look at you, Tara, I actually see you've got gorgeous flowers around you. You and your husband are doing so many wonderful things to be self-sufficient. You have chickens that follow you around and think, oh, she's an amazing woman. Like, let me just keep on until she gives me what I need. You've got the wind chimes that, call the birds over to you. You've got family that loves you and is depending on you. You've got the talent of being able to sing and really bringing joy. You've got these things that, are just radiate from you. And with John, you've got this curiosity that never ends. You've got this want to make sense of the things that are around you. And the fact that you've traveled and you understand how different cultures work. And I think if we look at other people in a particular way and we remind them what it is that we see that they have, then they help others do the same. And then everybody's sharing in this, wow, this is what I admire. This is what I notice. And this is why you're here for this reason and this moment and this time. Because when we tell ourselves, yeah, it helps. But when someone's perspective brings that to us, it is amazing. And so I think, that's why just smiling at someone random in a store is so great for them. You never know what they're going through. And then when you actually might need the smile, so you might be causing the reaction because you need people to smile at you at the moment. You just don't know it yet, and so you smile and then you get a smile, and then that energy level, that fuel goes up. And then your body's like, hey, you need more fuel. Let's just keep it going. And then you talk to the cashier and the cashier smiles. Then you joke around about something, and then you see the red box right there. And then you look on your phone and there's a text and there's a coupon for it. And then it's the movie your kids wanted to see and everything just works out. And then you're smiling and you get home and the kids are like, hey, can we watch a movie tonight? And you're like, whoosh, yes, I already got one, and then you're like, yes, and you take in those small little victories and they seem so immense. Because you allowed your fuel to be refilled rather than shutting yourself off because you don't want to be hurt. Just, know those things will happen. There's no way to change them, but any moment you can soak up as much good as you can to refuel yourself for the next day. Because if you're always fueled up, it doesn't matter what hits you. You can still keep moving. You're like a big Tonka truck, or you're like a big, huge, monster truck on the highway. And, something bad happens, you just roll right over and keep going because you got plenty of fuel and you're made of steel and you just keep going and you got big old tires. That's why it's important to be fueled and not empty. And so we just grab it wherever you can. Don't steal it from somebody, but just grab it when people are handing it out. And I think that, staying fueled and letting those who you love that are around you that tend to take a lot of your fuel, give them a task that will help fuel you back up. Let them know, hey, I can give you fuel, but I need you to give me fuel because I can't give myself fuel. The attachment's way back here, and I can't reach it. So you're going to have to help. And I think with that, we can help keep each other full so that when catastrophe strikes or something difficult, we can handle it because it's tough, but we're tougher.
I know. I love that analogy of the Tonka truck because that was one of my favorite toys growing up. And that's what we have to be for each other. Not everybody can be up on the same day. And so we have to be the Tonka truck for one another that says, come on, get back in the game, get back in the fight.
Well, we can.
And I was just going to say, as someone who didn't necessarily grow up loving trucks, and now I do, you get into a mode where you realize some of these tricks they're throwing out there of like, oh no, the trucks are going to destroy the blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like, it feels good to get outside of these like fear tactics that have been put on you. It's like, yeah, we want a big truck and somebody's going to drive it. Maybe, and it might be me. We'll see.
But
Yeah,
another thing
Go
that
ahead,
gives
John.
me fuel, another thing that helps me to stay fueled up is what happened yesterday during the protest at Plainview, because I see it even in the school. The inner city schools are terrible, and I think how many things that you and I and Tara have, because we had a pretty good childhood, not perfect, but a pretty good childhood, and we need to make sure that the schools are we have to put a stop to what the schools are doing to our kids.
I don't know if Tara knows about Plainview. Did you hear about it, Tara?
I'm not sure. Fill me in.
Okay. So about a month ago, or a little under a month ago, there was a family who went through a tragedy. There was a 6-year-old little girl who was at school. And while she was at school, 2 6-year-old little boys pulled her under a desk and made her do oral. Well, when that happened, the school hid it from the parents. They mentioned, or the grandparents, they mentioned something like there was an iPad incident, but they didn't say it was school. It was a school iPad. They didn't say that somehow the video escaped. They didn't say what took place on it. And then when they asked the little girl, because she said her stomach hurt, she didn't want to eat, she was tired all the time. They knew something was wrong when they asked her. She said she was standing in the lunch line, and this little boy pulled out his and a substitute told them to both stop, but she wasn't doing anything. But the boy who did that is the same boy who was bringing his dad's phone to school that had porn on it, but also pulled her under the desk and filmed it while he made her and forced her to give oral to the other little boy. Right. And so they wouldn't let the parents see this. And so there were some people that I'd known on Twitter that were around Texas, and they were going to do a protest. And now they're going to do it in all 50 states, where if you have a school incident, everyone reports it. They get everyone who's wanting to do something to actually, we called this one Hidden in Plain View. So I helped with like trying to get it, where a lot of people partook in it. There were 2 people that like, one was in Las Vegas, one's in Texas. They took their whole family there. I called Andy. Andy did a quick video on it last Monday. And then John and Andy live streamed it because Andy drove there because it was almost an hour, a little less than an hour from where Andy is. So he got to meet those people who are starting this whole big campaign. And one is doing something called We're Done. And it's about pushing back locally. Against your local government. The other one was Hidden in Plain View, and We Will Not Be Silenced. Okay, so there's We Will Not Be Silenced, and We're Done. And so they are going to be doing a 50-state, going across and empowering parents. So there's Andy, and there's Hiley, and he is interviewing him. And there's a girl named Beef. She was there, and her family drove up there. And they went to the school board meeting and they let them have it. Some people were rowdy and got kicked out, but rightly so. And the school lied and said that it was being investigated by the authorities, but they hadn't handed anything over to the authorities. But now the FBI has taken over sort of investigators, and a lot of people are saying the Texas Rangers are looking into it and that they're going to handle this, but it's going to probably take 6 months to a year. But they escorted the aunt and they only gave everyone only a minute to speak rather than 3 or 5 minutes, which is disgusting. And they were chicken, and they lied and said there was going to be a terroristic threat, and there wasn't. And it was just one boy on Instagram who did some whatever post because they were trying to keep people from going. And they lied, and they kept putting out weather reports that said there was going to be storms and tornadoes there. But when they got there, he did a video on Twitch that actually shows sunny, bright skies, like the fluffy clouds. So they lied about weather. So you even have the weathermen and the newscasters in on it, where they're going to give a false news report and put it all out all over the United States, that if you looked, it was going to show that is, there's going to be lightning and tornadoes, and there was no such of a thing. So this stuff is well hidden, and we don't know if actually they are getting little kids to do this, so that then they can sell it on the dark web. Or if the dad is pushing back against the gay agenda in schools and then is going the heterosexual agenda, which of course it's going to do the pendulum swing. Oh, you're about to make my boy gay. Well, watch this. I'll make him straight. So then dads start showing their kids porn in order to make them straight, right? But it totally messes up their whole idea of what sex is and a relationship is because they're too young. So you've got that pushback. It could be an older brother, it could be a cousin, it could be what the school's teaching. So there's someone pulling a FOIA for the library to see what books are being shown. But this school has had multiple issues. More parents have come forward, and the superintendent they have has moved to 3 different school districts. And when we looked him up, he has 18 different aliases. So they're probably connected to cartel. Some people didn't show up because they are going to be running for office in Texas, and it would be a threat to their family. So they didn't show up. But people who felt very comfortable or were former military did show up because they're like, I dare them to try to step to me. Right. So you had particular people who were like, bring it. Like, I've seen war, like, bring it, And so they weren't, you had regular citizens who were like, I can't put my family through this. So, but they did it virtually. So they attended virtually. A lot of people did Twitter spaces on it. At one time, you had 2 live streaming. You had 4 Twitter spaces. And you had congressmen from Minnesota, from Massachusetts, from Virginia, and like all these states that were watching it, listening to it, and saying that they're going to do something in their state and to please send them any information if you live in that state and you're seeing any schools that are particularly behaving this way, because they're going to step up to the challenge. And so we're going to hold them to it. So we'll see. But like, that's what's been going on. And it was kind of like, very tense because you saw everyone's kind of emotion going back and forth, and getting upset that some people were discouraged to go because of the weather, but then it ended up being super sunny. But they ended up having a really good turnout, and it made their point. And now you've got the Texas Rangers and other people looking into something, because the sheriff, who's supposed to look at it, he's really close with the superintendent. So of course he said, there's nothing I can do about it. So what we're going to do is look into the sheriff as well, because that's unacceptable behavior. And so, you've got a lot of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, and nobody wants to get fired. So, once it gets investigated and they find out that this is not the first incident, and they moved those boys, instead of informing the parents, they moved into another room. Shortly after that, when parents found out what happened, they had shared that 2 of the kids in that room had started wetting the bed all of a sudden. And so they know that those boys are doing a bunch of stuff, but you can't kick a kid out under 10. But they could have separated and put them in a totally different class, like by themselves, until it was sorted out. But they didn't. They just shoved them somewhere else and told everybody there's nothing to see here. And the school's investigation and CPS, you know what they said? That their investigation revealed it was consensual. And they wouldn't.
Nice.
But they wouldn't let the parents see the video until the parents got a lawyer, the grandparents. Once they got the lawyer, it showed the girl was hitting them with the poetry book and saying, no, please, no. And one of the boys threatened to kill her. So she ended up doing it. Yeah.
This is basically, it's like, yes, there's like this, they're putting it under the guise of the gay agenda. This sexualization is a degradation process. You know what I mean? This is and we talk about it all the time. The funding is flooding these districts and these schools. It's flooding it. So people, they feel entitled to do this kind of stuff because the money's backing it. And the people that are placed in the higher positions to arrange it all, you know what I mean? So it's like they have a false sense of righteousness, and anybody that really delves into the information, like there are people that don't understand what's going on. They're lied to, and it's like, oh, this is a thing about, Rosa Parks or something. Like those people just don't know. But people that sit there and listen to these people describe things at a school board and then still don't do anything about it or get it. I meant these are like brown shirts, or you know what I mean? They are literally being like evil freaking minions. And I'm so
Absolutely.
glad that Andy was there. I did see that one girl giving her little thing, and I saw something about her getting removed, but I didn't see it until you just showed that picture right now. I didn't realize that Andy was there, or that P stood for Plainville. But that sounds awesome, because really we need a huge network of unified, bold pushback against this crap.
Yeah, this
Definitely.
is something that should catalyze, it should be a catalyst for effective action, because there's a lot of little small groups with their various tactics, but this one event could become the catalyst for them to coalesce and become a massive pushback against the agenda.
That's what we're hoping. That's what we're hoping for. I'll push back in Georgia. I'm sure you all will push back. But like, that's why you've got two different entities. One is We're Done, and it's more about dealing with local government. And the other one is We Will Not Be Silent, and it's for parents to push back. And one thing that is so infuriating, yes, parents are taking their kids out to homeschool them, which makes them safe from it, but we're still having to pay taxes to these public schools that are failing us. So there is no discouragement for them to stop. And so even if you pull your kids out, everyone's still having to pay taxes, even the ones who are elderly, don't have kids, or someone who never had a kid, or someone whose kids are grown, they still have to pay school taxes. So we're just going to have to fire these people. We're going to have to get them out of the system, because they are a scourge. They are a blight. They are a fungus. They are a bacteria. They cannot be part of the equation, because we can't fight the IRS on this, right? Because they're going to take that money regardless. And even if we all have our kids home, we're still paying taxes for a school system that's churning out kids that are going to be harmed. And if they don't like that opinion, then maybe they should stop allowing kids being harmed and hiding it. And so I know that we said we would do it short today. And I did send John an email of a poem. And I hope next week you bring your poem about the lilacs, because I want to hear it. But this one is If. And when I listen to it, whether you have a daughter or a son, I look at it as what a parent is supposed to do to prepare their child. And some of it is like going to be hard to do, because you got to prepare them for the harsh world. And some of it is very loving. But in the end, it's a parent talking about once they've utilized those things that the parent has taught them, when the parent is doing their job correctly, that it makes them into the strong adult that, helps them to be able to live in the world and make a change, like do something positive and make their life meaningful. So it's a YouTube clip, so it's not TikTok or anything else, John. So it should be easy to play.
Well, I just want to tack on. I just want to say real quick, let's keep eyes on the Board of Education, because they have to be somewhat of a
Definitely.
they have to be culprit here.
I sent it in the Proton, John.
Well, I checked the Proton mail and it's not there. Well, oh, there it is. I swear, 2 seconds ago it wasn't there.
It just popped in.
Yeah.
Another thing that I hope comes out of this is that the whole JTTF crew gets exposed, the Joint Terrorism Task Force, because there's too many DynCorp sheriffs connected to school boards.
And they're always friends with like our superintendent and sheriff and mayor. They're pretty close. They go to a lot of meetings together, and they join the governor as well. So if you know that the sheriff is silent, that sheriff has to go to sheriff association meetings with all the sheriffs of that state. How come the rest of the sheriffs of that state aren't ostracizing that sheriff or asking the sheriff what the hell is going on? Right. So then if it's a good old boy network, what good are you? You might be in the highest position, but what the hell are you doing? Why would you allow some people who are connected or are allowing misbehaviors or miscalculations or irresponsibility, or a group of people who are supposed to protect children have a oopsie and then try to hide it? That's unacceptable. That has to be addressed. It has to be scorned. It has to be shamed instead of covered over so your buddies, feel comfortable. It's not about feeling comfortable. It's about doing the right thing and righting a wrong. Here it is. And just when we're listening to this, think about, giving your children all these tools and watching them. And then once they've attained these tools, they are then an adult. It's one of my favorite poems of all time.
Kipling. You can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it you. If, when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies. Or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good, nor talk too wise. If you can dream, and not make dreams your master. If you can think, and not make thoughts your aim. If you can meet with triumph and disaster, and treat those two impostors just the same. If you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to, broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn at pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will that says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son.
I love it.
That is incredibly
That really
beautiful.
is a good poem.
Yeah, and the same with women. I mean, like, do you allow for someone to start rumors about you and then it causes you to be just as nasty, or do you stay consistent and you show that what was said about you was untrue with your consistency, and though it may take a while, you don't hold others accountable who believed what was said, and you don't even go after someone with more rumors or innuendo or gossip. You just allow and you let people shuffle and let the chips fall where they may, and eventually they'll know you as a person who is consistent, and they may not ever apologize, they may not ever acknowledge it, but they'll know, and they'll know deep down, and then that'll build their trust in you because they knew that you knew and you said nothing. They knew that you had to fight for your good name and they didn't particularly help you. And so these are very hard things to deal with in life, to have everything destroyed and build it up with worn out tools. And just act as if, well, this is normal. It's about handling and not reacting in a particular way that brings on more damage and more harm, but in a way that you just pass another test and another test. And the more tests you pass, the harder it gets. But then you reach a point where you've become a man or a woman. And then in that, you're able to take on bigger tasks because your parents allowed for you to have an understanding of what it meant to actually become a mature adult. And a lot of people are adults, but they haven't become one. They're children. They're adult children and not mature adults, right? So, we have to have patience with that, but the best way to do that is to be an example of that.
It's kind of like the Who's down in Whoville again.
Exactly. And
Just
see,
gonna
that's
keep
like
on
one of
doing
the best. Yes. It's so wonderful. And that's why sometimes these books are children's things. If you look at it from one perspective, it's like, oh my God, that's brainwashing. But if you look at another and you actually use that good interpretation, then your child walks away with having a deeper understanding because you didn't fall prey to the nitpicking or saying, oh, wait a minute. I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like this. You go, well, some people may look at it this way, but here, let me show you another perspective. And then you teach that perspective because you can't stop them from wanting to see the movie. You can't stop them from wanting to read the book, but you can direct the perception and tell them about the other perception that people are having, but then tell them how you see it. And then that they have that measure, they have that weight, and then they're able to balance it. And then you see who they are as a person. The most important thing we can do is offer the options, sit there and watch and see what they gravitate towards, and then help them where they are and let them embrace who they are, and then speak to them as that person instead of demanding that who they were created to be was not right because you want them to be created another way because there's resistance, there's conflict, there's rebellion, And there's like all of this. And I know none of us are perfect parents and we're going to do that tons of times. And I said no. And then all of a sudden they're going to be like, but I have to do it now because she said no. Right. So that's going to happen. But I think as long as we keep reminding each other, that list of like how many times I screwed up might be this much instead of this much. So like you give me your, helpful tips. I'll give you mine. We all share. And then our list is shorter of screw ups as parents because it's hard. And we got to let our kids know you're going to screw up too as a parent. It's just the way it is. But do you learn from it? Do you keep doing it? Do you apologize for it? Do you grow from it? Like what are you going to do with that screw up? And I think, we can all help each other because we all need help, immense help, especially in this world.
And also our DNA provides everything that our ancestors have learned in that way. So we literally have that intrinsically in us.
Absolutely. We just have to tap into it because the world is constantly telling us you don't have it. Let me tell you. That dark nature that is part of death is part of like the depressing, the sad, the horrible, the scary. That is always like in the back of our head going rather than us going, oh, wait, what do I know inherently to do? What did the people who lived before me? What did my ancestors do? What do I know? That's hard to hear when everything around you is screaming everything else. And we just need to help each other remember that. And sometimes we sound cheesy when we're like, just remember, you need to and people are like, oh my God, did you not hear me? This is such a bad story. But hey, so goes life. And that's the difficult part. Like we might not want someone to remind us of our blessings, but we need it. We may not want someone to tell us to eat our vegetables, but we need them. We may not want someone to tell us to get vitamin D. So what? We may not want it, but we need it. And God will send that to us. And God will send us everything, whether it's a test, whether it's a praise, whether it's a negative. How are we going to receive it? And what are we going to learn from it? And I think I actually need to be reminded that every day. So whenever you see me, make sure to remind me because I'm really good at dishing out this advice. But when put the heat to the fire, I'm like, what did I say? I said, remember, you better clean your room. Yeah. So,
Well, we're talking to ourselves too here.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Because I'm like a hot-headed mom. Did I say to do this? No, we're not going here. You didn't pick up your shoes. You didn't do this. And then later I'm like, I could have probably done this psychologically in order to get them to respond better. Make a note of it because, of course, you're not going to do that next time because you're a hot-headed mother. You're like an angry Italian mom, except you're not Italian. And you're like a Latino mom who's like grabbing her flip-flop, say, I'm going to get you with this chancla. You better do what I say. Like, you got to remember, Amber. So I've got all these notes that I never use, right? And so I'm getting there. But it's hilarious. Like, I know parents go through this, but then you're like, oh, I'll do it better next time. But, just as if everyone reminds each other, we'll get there. But,
it develops such good skills because after you've been a parent for like many years and stuff, you have this ability to just like say you're I don't know the example, but say you're in a crowd and something like strangers or something's going to happen. You have that voice. You could be like, announcement, blah, blah, blah. Like you just have these skills that like you can be the announcer. Yeah, it's pretty cool actually. So
But that's why grandparents are so amazing because after you've had kids and your kids have kids, they're like, why were you never like this with me? And you're like, because I had to figure out everything and you were the challenge.
We had to learn.
And now here's your little package of joy that yes, I'm more relaxed. And yes, I'm like excited to see them. And yes, I'm energetic. And yes, I don't approach it like I did you when I said, don't touch that. You better. But, this I had to learn. You will go through the same thing. You'll be a better grandparent than you were a parent. Everybody is. It's just the way that life goes.
That's why I don't trust especially in Europe, the leaders, quote unquote, civic leaders that don't have any children. They haven't had to form those gates in their brain and in their larger mind in order to deal with adolescent type behavior. Or with kids who are fighting one another, right? And it's that attitude of love towards the kids who are fighting each other. You want each kid to grow. You want each kid to have a better future, but you have to think really fast how to get the kids separated, how to make them understand.
But also, if you have more than one kid, you actually know that they're not all the same. right? And that each child, and even if you just have one kid and grandkid, you know that each child is different. But you also know that because if you had one kid, you went on a play date, you saw all the kids were different. And so it's very dangerous for a leader to not have children because they end up doing a protocol that everybody has to have. They end up having an education system and curriculum, no child left behind, except they leave thousands of children behind because it's one template that doesn't fit every child. Like, hello, excuse me, did you have children? Did you have multiple children? Did you not know that one child does really well and learns their lesson when they're grounded? The other one does better with getting a lecture, and the other one does better with a pat on the butt. Like, if you don't understand that each person has a different way of receiving information and learning from an issue or learning how to problem solve, then you don't need to be in charge of how to teach children because it's all different. There is not one template. And I think that's what's missing with some of the leaders, either that or they were never there to parent and they had nannies. So they didn't even learn, even though they have kids. So sometimes, even though they had kids, if they were well off, their kids private school, went to military school, went to some kind of boarding school. Then they had a nanny and they saw their kids for dinner once the kid was taught etiquette. So, they at the same time may not even have the parental structure or understanding.
Or sometimes their parents abused and freaking transitioned them as a little kid and made them do all this freak stuff. And then they love to put those people in power.
Yep, exactly. And so we'll see each other next Friday, and I'm going to go pick up my kids from carpool and maybe take them to the Fernbank Science Center or something so they can.
Well, thanks for that awesome poem.
Oh, it is one of my favorites. It gives you chills. Like for me, every time I hear it, I'm just like, and the voice. So when you look it up, it's If by Rudyard Kipling, but you got to look at under spoken verse because that guy's voice, it's mesmerizing. Some of the other people, they've got a squirrely voice and like, it doesn't really play as well. So you really need that guy who does spoken voice because it's deeper and it's better and it just draws you in. But yeah.
Well, I'll try to find the other poem and try to read it in my own voice.
Exactly. He also does a good one called The Gods of the Copybook Headings, which is exactly what we're going through, where people want to believe fantastical things, but there is a rule and structure of life. There is life and then there's death, and that happens to all of us. And there is something that is a template, but we learn to maneuver within it. But then there's people who actually imagine and try to bring about imaginary things that ends up killing and hurting more people because they tried to take over the natural cycle. This divergent of people who want to take control over something that is impossible to take control over, and they fight that the gods of the copybook headings, like this is what happens, and then it causes more travesty because the gods of the copybook headings are still there. It's not going to change, but it's the things that come in and have you believe these fantastical things, like, oh, we can live on Mars, or like, oh, we can do this, or robots should take over, that cause much more danger for us as humans. It takes us away from the natural cycle of things. Yes, we can tweak the natural. We can tweak the natural cycle. We can deal with the natural cycle, and we can do our best, and we can even enhance it. But to avoid it or think that we can just make it go away and we can live forever, that's just. And we can't just give like some kind of shot and genetic thing that kills off most people in order to try to find a way for the wealthiest old people who are afraid to die to live longer. Like that's where this poem, God of the Copybook Headings, is really
and that's who we're fighting. And we need to remember we are children of God. We are all together in that light. Okay, so let's get together these meetings against the school, get to the school boards, and we're gonna fight these scumbags.
We
absolutely
will.
Absolutely.
And
Power to the people.
I'm going to play us out with Fly Like an Osprey by the great Norman Smith.
All right. Thanks, Norman. Have a great weekend, guys. Eek, eek.
Eek.
Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, time keeps on slipping into the future. Time keeps on slipping, slipping, slipping into the future. I want to fly like an osprey to the sea. Fly like an osprey, let my spirit carry me. I want to fly like an osprey till I'm free. Lord, to the revolution. Feed the babies that don't have enough to eat. Shoe the children, no shoes on the feet. How's the people living in the street? Oh, there's a solution. I want to fly like an osprey to the sea. Fly like an osprey, let my spirit carry me. I want to fly like an osprey till I'm free. Oh, through the revolution. Time keeps on slipping, slipping, slipping